Against all odds, we're back for a second episode. At least no one can say we were one and done. As the holiday season approaches and the weather cools, Marty, has the weather cooled?
Yeah, it's beautiful outside.
Okay. Well, just
Lovely.
today finally did. Life on the Cambridge campus is becoming quite festive as Christmas approaches. Having grown up in the great white north of Wisconsin, I still miss the change of season. Nonetheless, Thanksgiving and Christmas provide great opportunities to celebrate God's amazing provision to us personally and at CCS. Speaking of God's provision, our annual gala was last week. It makes sense today, then, that our guest would be Ed Jones, our Director of Development. Ed joined the Lancerville community 3 years ago, and his impact has been immediate and significant. Join us to hear the difference Jesus has made in this man's life and why he is so passionate about what God is doing at Cambridge Christian School. Cambridge Christian School is an independent private Christian school in Tampa, Florida for students 1-year-old through 12th grade that partners with families and the local church to provide a kingdom education, thereby preparing students for college and life. Ed, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you.
I know this has been a very busy season for you. I figured following the gala, maybe you'd have a chance to exhale and we could get you in the studio here. Thank you for making time for us.
Yeah, glad to be here.
Great. Well, as you know, in our first episode, we were joined by your good friend, Scott Moore, another California native. It may appear we're trying to jumpstart the podcast with only Hollywood types like yourself, but I assure you that is not the case.
Yeah, well, it makes sense. It makes sense.
Actually, if you would, well, tell us about your family and the migration from Cali.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I'm glad to be here, and I did listen to the podcast last week, and it was amazing. I'm grateful that Scott Moore is here, and it was just a great time. So if you haven't listened to that one, make sure you do. In terms of my family, so born and raised in California, actually Northern California. So if you're not from California, Northern California and Southern California are really considered like different states. So we are from the better section of California, Northern California. Born and raised there. Obviously, my boys were born and raised there because they came with Christy and I. Christy and I met in college at a Christian, or not at a Christian college, at a Christian club in college, and we're married. Been married almost 30 years.
Nice.
But we actually never felt like we were going to move out of California. We felt like we were called there. We were very connected with a church and a Christian school there in California. And so we felt like we were going to stay. My wife was the principal at the school. I graduated from that school. And then my boys attended there. I worked there for a number of years. My wife worked there. And then there came a point, though, where that season ended, and so it was the first time we ever considered moving out of California, and that was a few years ago, and so we ended up here. So.
All right. So that you were from the better part of California. Is
Yes,
that
yes,
where the
yes.
people think they're better, or is what
No,
makes it better
that's
exactly?
Southern California. That's where Hollywood is. That's where the people think they're better. Northern California, it's more,
Laid back.
just laid back, down to earth. I mean, there are good people in Southern California.
Right, of course.
Don't get me wrong. But.
So you're not actually a Hollywood type. That's
No.
That's the rumor. Just so you know.
People that know you know you're not the Hollywood type.
Yeah.
And I mean that in the best of ways.
Well, thank you.
Oh, absolutely. Very humble man. That's
I'm proud to be so humble.
Yes.
Thank you.
As well you should be.
Yeah.
Well, what was it then? So you decide, okay, it's time to move out of there unexpectedly, but I remember it a little bit myself, but certainly no one else or very few other people know. What was it about Tampa and about Cambridge specifically that drew you here?
Yeah, so like I said, we were very connected, 20 plus years at the same church and Christian school, and thought that that's where our boys would graduate from, that type of thing. And when we felt like that season had ended, it was really the first time ever that we'd considered moving out of California. And so we thought, okay, well, we're going to move someplace that we feel aligns more closely with kind of what our belief system is and that type of thing. And not that any state or municipality is perfect, in terms of all of that. But so we were considering Tennessee, the Carolinas, Texas, and Florida. Mm-hmm. And so I was looking at different options there. And to be honest, I was actually really close to taking a job in Texas. I was about to fly out to meet with this ministry. I was going to meet with their board. And so I was talking to my wife about it. And I said, well, I'm going to go interview with the board here in a couple of weeks. They're probably going to offer me this position. How do you feel about us moving to Dallas area? And my wife said, are there any beaches, like real beaches in Texas? Obviously, we're from California, right? And so
that's true.
The beaches in California are beautiful. Right. The beaches in Florida were beautiful. And so I'd looked in Florida and hadn't found anything. And so I said, well, I'll go back and look again. And so when I looked again, I actually was looking at Cambridge's website, came across the position for the director of development, and then we started having conversations. Yep. And actually, I flew out the week before I was going to meet with the folks in Texas, and came to the school, met all the folks, fell in love with Cambridge, and so and that's what brought us here. So
yeah, awesome. I remember it very well because it was on the heels of a period of time where I had absorbed, as head of school, I had absorbed the position of director of development.
Right.
Which went quite well for a pretty short span of time. And then I hit a wall in terms of, I think, being successful in the position. I have no background in it whatsoever. And so when we met, of course, via whatever, electronic.
Zoom call.
Zoom call. When we met via Zoom, from the get-go, I was really excited about the possibility of you coming, had a piece very early on that you should be the guy, and I'm really glad Texas didn't happen.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I'm glad too, I think. I mean, I definitely am glad.
Whoa,
as far as climate and all, I mean, everything, I'm really glad. But I think it was God's timing. And honestly, my mother-in-law, she lives in Ocala, not too far away. Right. My sister-in-law lives in Vero Beach. They've been trying to get us out here for a long time. And so
I remember, I was thankful for them being close, because I think that helped get you here as well, for sure. Well, let's talk just your background briefly. We're not going to unfold the whole resume here today, but I'm curious from your perspective, what were the previous business and ministry experiences you had that you feel have really contributed to your success here and in the Office of Development?
Yeah, so I became a Christian, a follower of Christ, when I was 15 years old. So before that, I had no inclination towards anything in terms of ministry or anything like that. When I became a Christian when I was 15 years old, though, it shifted for me. I actually had a basketball coach that led me to the Lord, and then he worked at a Christian school. I started attending there. And not too long after that, I felt like I was supposed to go into full-time ministry. And so I did. I was an intern at my church. I ended up teaching. I was a Christian educator. I taught history and Bible for 7 years. I was a youth pastor, worship pastor. About 7 year into that, I felt God moving me a different direction. And crazy thing, I actually went into banking. And so I took an entry level job at a bank. I didn't know why at the time I did that. But I knew that's what I was supposed to do. I took an entry-level job at a bank, moved my way up pretty quickly, actually was very successful at that, won Rookie of the Year award and different production awards and that type of thing. And actually, when I was first going through that, I thought, well, maybe God's just doing this. I mean, we were both in ministry and Christian education, so we didn't have a lot of money, right? And so I thought, well, maybe God's just doing this so we can buy our first home and my wife can stay home with the kids, that type of thing. And so I continued to work there. It was a large national bank. And then about 6 years into that, I shifted over and I was offered a position at a banking institution that actually did banking for ministries, for churches, Christian schools,
that's
parachurch ministries, that type of thing. And it was one of those light bulb moments, because I didn't understand at the time why God had me go into banking, and then I'm working at this ministry lending institution, and all of a sudden the light bulb goes on. They wouldn't have asked me for that position if I hadn't had 7 years of ministry and Christian education experience, and they wouldn't have offered me that position if I didn't have the 6 years of banking experience. So I did that for 6 years. After about 6 years, the subprime crisis had hit, and so I left there. They had to do some restructuring there. I went to a national bank that everybody would know the name of, and you can look at my LinkedIn profile if you want to deduce which bank that was.
Yeah, but I can't give out bank names here because the advertising dollars.
Yeah.
I don't want to get in trouble.
Yeah, that's true.
Right,
they'd have to pay us a dividend.
That's
dividend,
right.
Yeah. But after I was at this large bank for about a year, I missed being involved in kind of that ministry side of. I felt like there was something that I could do financially, but I felt like the impact that I could make ministry-wise was what I was missing. And so I started considering other options because my boys, they were like around 8 and 6 years old. And I just didn't want my life to just be about, I'm just going to go try to make a bunch of money, and that type of thing. I wanted to be able to coach my son's basketball games and be involved in different things. And I wanted to really do things that were impactful. And so I actually started working for a Christian university in Northern California and ended up as a donor development position. Ended up there. I never aspired to do that, but it was one of those things that it just fit. And so did that for 6 years. And then it kind of leads to what we're talking about now, where we felt the chance to move across country. So when you ask the question about how it all fits, it's amazing actually how it all fits,
indeed.
right? Because obviously in Christian education ministry, and then in the donor development side with the fundraising side at the university, but then on top of that, on the financing, the banking side, as you know, we've been going through this capital campaign, this new building project. And I had the opportunity to be, and am still very involved in the financing that we acquired to complete this project. So I feel like it's one of those things where the kind of that light bulb moment when I went to that ministry bank, is that same light bulb moment. It's like, okay, God, that's why you're doing all this. So
isn't it amazing? I can look back over the years at the experiences that God put on my life, and at the time I'm like, come on, really? This isn't really what I want to be doing.
Right.
Why am I spending so much time on this? And all the things ultimately fold together into to where he puts you.
Right.
And I mean, having been here 11 years now,
right.
I can look back on great experiences I had. I can look back on horrific experiences I had,
right.
and see specifically what I learned in both cases that contribute to my role here at Cambridge.
Absolutely.
And it's fun to tell our kids stuff like that, who are kind of, my kids are grown now. Our youngest is 21. But they're kind of in that period where they, where's this really all heading?
Right.
And so we can tell them stories like that.
Right.
Speaking of which, if you have 2 boys,
yes,
semi-grown,
right. Yeah.
Not quite all the way yet, but if you would.
One would say he's fully grown.
Oh, yes.
He's off to college now.
I know which one that would be, yes. Yeah. But tell us about your boys and maybe the parental perspective of the move to Cambridge as well,
right.
and how it's worked or not for them.
Yeah. So as you might imagine, transitioning with our son was going to his junior year in high school. And then our other son starting his first year of high school as a freshman, and we decide we're going to move clear across the country to Florida. Mm-hmm. So first off, the boys were very involved in the whole process and talking about it, praying about it, and that type of thing. And it was a consensus that we were supposed to come here. So they're very involved in that because we realized that's going to make a huge impact. And so there was a lot of change, right? I mean, you're talking about change of your friend groups. I mean, even my son, he was 16 years old. He's driving, and it goes from him asking, if he can drive over to a friend's house that he's known since he was 5 years old to driving over to a friend's house that he's known for 2 weeks, right?
Yeah.
It's all kinds of different conversations. And so there were a lot of changes for school, changes in the streets that we had to turn on. I mean, everything, dentist, and you name it, there was a bunch of changes. And so, that came with its share of difficulties. But at the same time, the one thing that, and then it was in a transition where our boys are teenagers, right? You have a 16 and 14-year-old. You've raised three teenagers and seen them go through that process. There's changes. Without us moving, there would have been a lot of changes, as they're becoming more independent. And so as we're working through this transition of moving to this new place, a lot of new things, we're also working with the transition of them forming as men who God's called them to be. And so us starting to let go, especially with our oldest, of, okay, from when they were young, okay, this is how you do this, exactly like this, to now there's this transition of, this is how I think you should do this, and let them make choices, within reason, and you're still a safety net for them when they're making those decisions. Yeah. And so one of the things that I've always prayed, or Christy and I both have always prayed for our boys, as we know that obviously we want to be a big influence in their life, but there will be other influences. And so we prayed that God would bring people, adults into their lives that could really speak into their lives and impact them. Yeah. And the thing that was such a blessing to me is they found those types of people at Cambridge. Mm-hmm. You're talking about teachers and staff members that really cared about them beyond the academics, beyond the sports or music, that type of thing, but really cared about them as a person. And so as a parent, when you're trying your best to raise your boys and train them in the way they should go as people, as godly men, you are concerned that they're going to have the right influences. And so obviously we pray that every influence in their life would help them draw near to God, but specifically we prayed for adults, and they found those both in the school setting and then in the church setting, and so we're grateful for that. Yeah,
great stuff. Very underestimated importance of having mentors and having adults that really can be great examples to speak into our kids' lives. Yeah. I did not do a masterful job of that with my own kids, and praise God, he's blessed us anyway. We've got great kids, but I love the advantages gained by doing what you're suggesting.
Yeah.
Ed, your position at our school is certainly one of leadership. You sit on our executive team, you're on senior staff, but you've expanded your leadership reach on our campus beyond that of someone trying to raise money. You and your bride regularly lead worship with our staff, and I've seen you make a concerted effort to connect with staff and parents on a meaningful level. I must say, I've seen some directors of development come across as used car salesmen. How have you avoided this?
Yeah, well, I've never sold used cars. I don't think I'd be able to do that. But, I honestly, and maybe I shouldn't say this, but as a director of development, but I honestly couldn't fundraise at a lot of places. I couldn't be a director of development at a lot of places because I don't believe in what those places are doing and what they're doing. And so for me, that's kind of where it starts, is just a belief in the mission that is being accomplished. And then on top of that, I don't know, I guess coming from a ministry background and just really wanting to serve God, my first and foremost priority whenever I'm meeting with people is the person. I don't care if there's a dollar that comes to Cambridge or to the church or that type of thing, if first I don't see that person. And so my prayer whenever I am going to meet with someone is always, how can I bless this person and help them to grow closer to God, to be successful in life, and that type of thing. And I feel like all the other stuff will kind of take care of itself. And I've been blessed to work for organizations where they're okay with that. If I went to a college and they said, okay, yeah, these are the metrics and this is the way you're going to, talk to this many people and this many donations come in and that type of thing. And I mean, there's value in all of that stuff. But I mean, for me, it's always about relationships. Everything is about relationships. So.
And I really think that's a big part of the reason why I was so comfortable immediately in getting to know you. It was, first of all, as you mentioned earlier, so you checked every box. It was like, okay, banking? Really? Oh, you banking. We need someone to come in and run a capital campaign and, kind of, navigate these relationships with bankers.
Yeah, sure.
And, okay, so you've raised money specifically for Christian school settings. You've been an educator, you've been a coach. It was for any position. But we never get to check every box.
Sure,
and it was
sure.
I went right down the page. And then the kicker of all of it was how relational you are. And that of course is the heartbeat of Cambridge.
Sure.
For any position, but for this position specifically, it was a no-brainer from my perspective.
Yeah, and honestly, that's in the organizations that I've worked for, the ones where I've transitioned because of a manager that I was working with. It was typically it was always because it was a manager that prioritized other things over relationships. And for me, that's, and I mean, even when we talked, when I first came here, I just said, that's what I'm about. It's about relationships, and that's the number one priority. And so if that's going to be a shift in thinking where it's, we're trying to manipulate things or whatever to get the outcome that we want, that's not me. I wouldn't be able to sleep at night. So,
that used to be one of our advertising slogans.
What was that?
We're all about relationships.
Yeah. That's something my wife and I, we talk about this all the time because we can get into these work situations when we're working on all these different things, and we're looking at spreadsheets and all of that. And the one saying, probably the most common saying I have in my house when I'm talking to my wife, mainly when we're talking about different things that we're navigating with work, is it's always about relationships. I mean, when you look at that Excel spreadsheet and you look at, the 325 people that gave and these different things like that, each of those numbers represents a person that had an argument with their spouse or had some appointment they had to get to or whatever. It's always about relationships. And so that's just kind of my default and maybe that's just my, heart for ministry or whatever. But I feel like if I focus on that, the rest is going to take care of itself. So.
Great. Well, the gala was last weekend, the Shine
Yes.
Your Light Gala, and it was, as seemingly is the case now every year in increasing fashion, it was amazing. This is put together, of course, entirely by your department with Liz Myers running point.
Yeah.
And she has gotten better every year as well at securing a host of volunteers. And so there were, I don't know what the total number of people that had a hand in this, but I think it was high. If it wasn't high,
it was.
Okay, I was going to say,
no, there were a lot.
I know the number.
There's never enough, but it was a lot.
I know the number of
it's
hours.
increased every year. Yeah.
I know the number of hours was high because I talked to a couple of the husbands of those
exactly.
ladies who were looking forward to the event being over and get their wives back.
Oh, they're amazing.
Tell us about the purpose of that event. It's an annual event and the level of success this year and how it has developed in recent years.
Sure. Yeah. So, like you mentioned earlier, and we've talked about, I arrived here 3 years ago, and so this would be the third gala that we've had since I've been here. And when I first arrived here, and I started talking to Liz about the strategy for what we want to do at the gala, and started getting a pulse for what was happening at Cambridge, and really the focus we wanted to be on providing opportunities for students that wouldn't be able to otherwise afford a Christian education. Mm-hmm. So the first thing that we decided is it's got to be about tuition assistance. It's not about us look at how great we are, but let's it's about others, and we want to help others to be successful. So that was the first priority. And then the second thing was we want to make this a huge celebration. And for lack of a better description, basically being able to show off Cambridge.
Right.
So it's something that, because one of the things that I talked to Liz about is we want this to be a place that people want to say, this is my school. This is what God is doing at Cambridge Christian School. Mm-hmm. Do you want to be a part of it? And when I say, do you want to be a part of it, it could be them enrolling their students in the school, but it's also about, the gala is a fundraising event. It's also about them supporting what is happening at the school. The great part about that this year is this year, actually, when I came in and things were happening at the gala, there were so many times where somebody came up to me and say, "Hey Ed, I want to introduce you to somebody," because they were starting. Yeah, they invited somebody. Yeah. So nice. It was apparent that they said, "You have to see what's happening at my school." There's a business counterpart, that type of thing, and that's our goal, because we want to show off what God's doing at Cambridge Christian School. So we want,
and they're proud of their school, so they want to share it with others.
Yeah, exactly. And so I feel like that is what we're doing. We want to continue to expand on that. So I'd say, the main priorities is we want to provide tuition assistance so that we can. We don't want the school to just be about, and you've talked about this before, right, Sean, the school to just be about certain people at a certain economic level that can afford this education, but we want to provide this opportunity for everybody. And then secondly, we want to show off what God is doing at Cambridge Christian School, and we want other people to come and hear how excited we are so that they can get involved as well.
I love the way you explained that, to show off what God is doing.
Yeah.
And because there are many school environments that would really look forward to the opportunity to show off what they are doing.
Right.
And we have some incredible people that do great things, but all the glory is to God, and He's put the right people in the right seats here. Right. So it's fun to watch what He's doing, and certainly we're happy to brag on God at any time.
Amen.
Ed, your primary focus since coming aboard has been the Built for More campaign, our fundraising initiative for the implementation of a 4-phase master campus plan. God has certainly blessed your efforts on that front as well. And most now know that the construction has begun on a brand new 45,000 square foot high school building. Could you provide an update on the progress of that, as well as its timetable?
Yeah, so I am excited. We are where we are now, as we all know, or maybe not all the listeners know, but we had a groundbreaking ceremony a long time ago, and I've made this joke a number of times that usually you don't wait a year after your groundbreaking ceremony to break real ground, but that happens to be what happened. It wasn't part of our plan. We had some issues that we had to navigate with the powers that be in terms of permitting when we thought we were initially within a couple weeks, but that's passed now. Yes. So a few months ago, we started real construction, dirt moving, pipes going underground, wiring, all the things that need to happen underground. And then just a little over a week ago, we had the pouring of our foundation, the slab foundation.
Wait.
No, that's definitely that first one
never failed.
Okay, wait. So
I got it.
2 episodes and
that's what.
So now the first one is we had our groundbreaking ceremony a year before. Now you need to press that button.
Okay.
But now we just poured the foundation, the slab foundation for the new high school building.
Yes, I got it.
On that note, we'll introduce, similar to in episode 1, my sidekick, Marty Premer.
Oh my gosh, it's co-host, everyone. It's co-host.
I ask her each episode, look for the right opportunity to push one button, and we're 0 for 2 so far.
Okay, well, it caught me off guard. I was in a hurry.
We're working through this.
Yes, thank you, Ed.
Always the next episode, maybe.
Yeah. But and just to finish, we had the pouring the foundation, and that was on a Friday, and then the Monday we actually brought the students out there to pray, because obviously we can build these buildings, and we have this foundation, right, that is going to hold the building up, but really, like we talked about, it's about God, it's about Christ being at the center. And so we prayed to say, okay, God, we want you to be the foundation of everything that happens in this building. So we were excited to have that ceremony. I was excited to see teachers that have been here for many, many years walk arm in arm onto this new slab foundation.
It was an emotional day for everyone, including you, Mr. Minks. It was just very emotional.
I shared at the gala that when I stepped onto the slab, I started crying. I was like, what is going on? What's wrong with me?
It's been such a long time.
But I did not anticipate that kind of response, but it was really a moving experience. You did a great job coordinating that whole prayer event. Why build new facilities? You know, we've had. I know, kind of before this real momentum began. In terms of growth, I would talk to some folks internally that didn't really want growth.
Yeah.
Right. And because they were maybe fearful or trepidatious of some things that they felt would come with growth. The obvious answer to why build new facilities is so we can grow. Right. But why grow? For most of Cambridge's history, we've seemed content to have between 500 and 650 students. Why grow?
Well, so this is an interesting question because I have an anecdotal answer for this, and I was talking to him. So we mentioned I have two sons. One who graduated from the school is now off to college, and then another who is a junior at the school. And so we had an influx of students this year, and a lot of the influx was because of the expanded guidelines for Step Up for Students, and so I asked my son about his experience in the high school with these new students coming in, because you get concerned as you have this growth, right, in terms of culture. And so that was really the main reason I was asking the question, how has it impacted the culture? You know, what's kind of the vibe? That might not even be the word that they use nowadays, but whatever the word is, yeah. But I asked him, about the new students, and he shared with me, he said, a lot of these students are coming from public schools, right? And so they come onto the campus and they come to school and they are so excited to be here. They're like, I can't believe there's a place like this where we can we come to chapel, where we can study the Bible. You have these voluntary Bible studies that these students are going to, and they're telling some of the other students maybe that have been here a while, or maybe this is all that they've known. They're like, no, you don't understand how good this place is, you know. And so if we can provide an opportunity for more students to have that's what I get excited about, you know. And I already talked about the impact for my own boys of having kind of mentors or people that speak into their lives. But just to be able to have that where we can provide an option that aligns with biblical world values and so I think it's if we can provide that opportunity for more students, I'm excited about that. So.
Couldn't agree more. Very anxious to have a bigger impact across Tampa and the Tampa area.
Yeah.
So many may be hearing for the first time, even on this broadcast, about the growth at Cambridge and the development of our campus, and they may be surprised to hear, we're actually putting a building up. How can people get involved and support this effort?
Yeah, so for the Build for More project and campaign, the first thing, the central place you can go is to ccslancers.com/gala. That is going to have building up. I said it wrong. CCS Lancers. Not Gala. Okay. You can tell I've been thinking about Gala for many months now. ccslancers.com/build. Build. So if you go there, it's going to have updates on the building project, and then it's also going to have how you can get involved. We're actually just in the process of launching our brick, tile, and room dedication campaign. There's going to be places both inside and outside the building where you can leave a legacy to remember. And so I had, before we even came out with this campaign, I had a number of people that are old timers with Cambridge that says, can I buy a brick? can I put my name on something?
That's huge.
Yeah.
I know my parents would love to do that. That's just a big thing for all
families. and I've talked about this before. It's not about putting your name in lights and about ego. It's really about us saying, hey, we're in this together.
We're all family.
Yeah, well, and in the book of Acts, when it talks about the early church and how they pooled their resources together in order to accomplish the mission that God had called them to, I feel like that's what we're doing when we do this naming thing, is like I'm in on what God is doing at Cambridge Christian School. And so that's on the website as well. So CCS, so just to get it right, ccslancers.com/build to learn more information.
Awesome. Yeah. So, we have parents currently in the school whose parents were married on our campus.
Yeah. Wow.
And I mean, and we have so many, math works this way, but every year that passes, we have an increasing number of alumni that bring their kids back. I don't know what the number is now that have come through, but it seems to be increasing exponentially every year, which is really exciting to see. And then alumni coming back and teaching at the school.
Yeah.
So all of that only strengthens the whole family dynamic. Well, this is clearly, at least it's really clear to me, Cambridge Christian School is God's school.
Amen.
What we are interested in pursuing individually and for the school as a whole is God's will.
Yep.
And all of these things happening now, we've prayed all along that they would happen in God's timing. Mm-hmm. And we thought like 5 or 6 years ago, hey, we're about to put a building up.
Yeah.
And then we thought again 3 years ago, we're about to put a building up.
Right.
And each time, one of the times was COVID. The one longer ago, there's been something that has come up where we said, as frustrating as it was in the moment, we just continue to pray God's timing, having no idea that we would creep up on 900 students before we even moved into the building.
Yeah.
Talk about God's timing.
Yeah, perfect.
Now we're
exactly
ready.
Who's doing.
We have a critical mass to move into a new building. If anything, our challenge will be
growing out of
finding a place,
filling it far more quickly than we ever dreamed. So it's just pretty awesome to see how he works, and it's our faith. It's amazing. Our faith should be stronger because we just see him deliver every time. Yeah. And so with that, Ed, I want to thank you for making time for us today.
Yeah,
it's
glad
been a
to.
Total pleasure to hear again. I'd actually be reminded of some of the details in your transition from California. Thank you for bringing other California families with you.
Yeah, well, I didn't force them. They came willingly, and I'm grateful that they're here.
Yeah, Scott Moore, if you don't know, our guest from the first episode, is a family that followed Ed and his family here. And then Ian, what is his title?
Ian Lytle.
Yeah, it was his title, though. Ian Lytle.
Facilities.
He's
coordinator or facilities manager.
Yeah, I should know, but he's awesome too.
Yeah.
He spoke in chapel here recently, and these guys and all of their families are having an impact on our campus. Yeah. And it's because God led you here.
Yeah.
Right.
Well,
and then he led them here as well. So thank you for coming to the school, but thank you for coming here for the podcast today. And
glad to.
It's been great.
I appreciate it. It's a privilege. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us today. The vision at Cambridge Christian School is to develop students into fearless defenders of the faith in partnership with their parents and the Bible-believing church community so that generations will know and serve God and recognize the truth and authority of the Bible. Go Lancers!